Ugh. Hey, Heavy Nation, I'm back. Let's go to Stormy Daniels this year. Oh, God.
But there are a couple of pauses here. In addition to the one you just mentioned, that he was outside the jurisdiction continuously when he was in Washington, and don't forget he also moved his residence from New York to Florida. The governor of New York during the COVID pandemic pressed pause on the statute of limitations for a period of time for all cases, for all criminal cases in New York. And that pause was for more than a year. So that is going to be another tolling, is what they call it, of the statute of limitations that the prosecution will rely upon here.
So Governor Cuomo put pause on that for how long?
So it's unclear because there were some that it was renewed and then it was stopped a couple of times. But I assure you that the lawyers at the Manhattan DA's office have calculated exactly what that period of time is with respect to this particular case.
Okay. Jamie Gangel, when you're looking at these images, one of the things, by the way, David Urban was wondering about Boris Epshteyn, who's on the far right side of your screen. Who is really more of a political advisor than a lawyer, sitting at the table, although I do believe he is in
He's in trouble, folks. Let me just go to another channel or something. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, he's in trouble, man. Let's see, ABC News. Go to ABC News Live, yeah.
Perfect example of prosecutorial discretion. You know, federal prosecutors and prosecutors throughout the American system are given the discretion, even if they believe a crime may be committed, to make an evaluation. Is this worth the expenditure of resources compared to the other challenges I have in my particular jurisdiction? And I think it's where Pierre's comments come particularly into focus here. You know, when you look at the timing of all this, no doubt there's DOJ policy that says impeachment is the only way to deal with the sitting president. So now once you get past January 20th, DOJ has to look at the resources they're bringing to bear here. They wanted those resources to be brought to bear on January 6th, I'm sure. And that was a prosecutorial judgment made probably by the Attorney General of the United States and passed down to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York to say, we're not wasting our time and resources on this. Our focus regarding Donald Trump's conduct is going to be on the intervening problem of January 6th and what crimes were committed there by people in his orbit, by the people on Capitol Hill, and ultimately maybe by the president himself. And so, you know, prosecutorial discretion is an important part of what makes our system different than the European system, for instance. And this is where I think Alvin Bragg is going to get himself open for the most criticism. With crime running as rampant as it is, violent crime, in the borough of Manhattan and all across the city of New York, but his jurisdiction, the borough of Manhattan, people are going to wonder, all these resources that are being spent on this matter, a 7-year-old hush money case, is that really making the security and safety of the people of Manhattan better? And is this really what they should spend their time on? DOJ obviously made that determination regarding this versus January 6th. Alvin Bragg's made his determination. They'll both be judged by it.
Legitimate questions, all to be asked in the days and weeks ahead. Chris Christie, thank you. Let's bring in Heidi Heitkamp. former Senator Heitkamp. And Heidi, you've been watching this unfold here today, and just your initial reaction here to learning 34 felony counts of falsifying records.
My initial reaction is Donald Trump is not a happy man. He never likes being in a room where he's not in charge. And so this is a tough day for him. My second thing is, where's Melania? I mean, when you look at this, you can do all the legal analysis, but Donald Trump knows that he's on a huge stage today. Everyone's watching. And behind all of this boring kind of business falsification argument is allegations of sexual liaisons that Donald Trump has not ever agreed that actually happened. But yet the public now is going to see this whole issue opened up again. And so if Donald Trump's going to be successful moving, seeking and securing the presidency, he needs to move one group that he lost between 16 and 20, and that's suburban Republican-leaning women, and they aren't going to like what they see in this indictment. They aren't going to like, Donald Trump's between a rock and a hard place politically right now, because if he acknowledges the liaison and says it was no big deal, I did this, purposefully, NDAs were signed, then you're going to have a bad political problem with the group that you need to secure for the presidency. And so the political ramifications are very stark here, in my opinion.
We asked the governor, we've asked him a number of contributors here, Heidi, what they made of the 3 or 4 seconds of the former president going into the courtroom. He lasered in on the camera, those still images of him flanked by his attorneys. You've watched the Trump years unfold. What did you make of those images?
And I've spent time with the president, and if you look there for a moment, he narrows his eyes. It's kind of a stink eye at the camera. I don't think he feels defeated nearly as much as he is seething with anger because he is not in control. He thinks and believes that this is all nonsense, and he's got to go through this very difficult process. And at the end of the day, I think he's smart enough to know this may reignite the MAGA base. He may be the martyr for the MAGA movement, but this is not a procedure that helps him secure the presidency of the United States.
Heidi Heitkamp. Heidi, we always appreciate your contributions as well. Our thanks to you and to Governor Christie. I want to bring in Mark Updegrove, presidential historian, LBJ Library, of course, in Austin. And Mark, just big picture here for people watching, and no matter what your opinion is about Donald Trump, what your opinion is about this particular case, knowing that there are a multitude of other cases out there still, coming down the tracks here. What do you make of the unprecedented nature of this day?
Well, you said it, David, and we hear it time and time and time again as it relates to Donald Trump.
34 counts,
it was mentioned earlier.
34 counts
infamous
of
trip down the escalator at Trump Tower when Trump announced his candidacy. That was unprecedented. So much he did during his campaign in 2015 and 2016, unprecedented. So much he did in the White House as president, unprecedented. And now
he's not locked up. He's getting out.
This is truly unprecedented. I think what strikes me in this moment, David, is the somberness. The weight, you can feel it. It's palpable.
That's
in
it.
The scene that we're seeing there in that photograph.
He's already locked up. He's not locked up. He's just getting out. He'll be out.
You can see it in Trump's countenance, and I think it reminds me most
of
another unprecedented occasion when Richard Nixon resigned from office in 1974. You could feel the weight of the occasion in that moment as well. You could see it on Nixon's face. And I think this image here that we're seeing before us now will become one of the icons of our age. For now, it'll be a symbol of defiance for Trump supporters, for those detractors of Donald Trump's, a symbol of his criminality. But certainly that is an image that we'll see that will symbolize this very divided age in which we are right now.
It's a really interesting comparison, Mark, and you point out the similarities.
Well,
let me ask you about something, one thing at least that's distinctively different, and that is the fact that a number, if not most Republicans on the Hill have rallied behind this president. We know, ultimately Republicans came in to tell Richard Nixon that essentially this was over. You're facing impeachment.
And David, that is the marked difference here. You're absolutely right. Prior to Nixon's resignation in August of 1974, congressional Republicans came to the Oval Office to tell Richard Nixon that he faced almost certain impeachment in the House, and likely conviction in the Senate, so he should resign for the good of the country. The Republicans were almost united in that respect. Americans were far less divided at that time. Richard Nixon left with an approval rating of just 24%. As a comparison, Donald Trump, even after January 6th, left with an approval rating of 34% and is now, as has been mentioned, the lead candidate for the Republican nomination. We saw in the wake of these charges, his poll numbers increase, his lead against DeSantis widen, and money pour into the Trump campaign. Again, another symbol of the very divided times in which we live.
And part of the unprecedented nature of this moment, and it will be fascinating to watch unfold, is what these Republican candidates do and say in the weeks and months ahead with all of these other cases pending, Mark. I'm curious if that's something, obviously, that you wait and will be watching closely. If there's a shift in tone, once you see where these other cases could potentially go with the Jack Smith, the special counsel investigating January 6th, the documents at Mar-a-Lago, not just the documents themselves, but obviously allegations of obstruction, and in Fulton County, Georgia, and the allegations that there was some pressure to, find the votes. People remember that recording. Whether or not Republican candidates who right now would like the nomination themselves, but are still supporting Donald Trump, if that political calculation will change, given what we see in the months ahead here.
It's interesting, David, we saw Trump come out with those NFT cards, those trading cards, a little while back. And one of them was of him as a superhero. But there has not yet been kryptonite for Donald Trump. This is another drip in the wake that affects Trump's candidacy. We have to remember that while he retains great strength among a certain segment of the Republican Party, he lost the election in 2020. There was a disastrous midterm for the Republicans last year as mostly around the election deniers who were in Trump's camp. So we'll see what this charge and the charges in those other cases do to erode Trump's credibility and affect his candidacy for the presidency next year. It's anybody's guess. He has been almost impossible to predict. We use the term.
Again, the Zoom connection tests us all the time, but that was quite a tease for Mark Updegrove. We'll get his final part of that thought because it was a good one. And I do want to bring in Rick Klein, our political director, because Rick, as our eyes are trained, there's some activity here, Secret Service coming out. Let's just stick with this live picture for a moment. There he is, the former president. Let's listen.
President Trump, how did you plead? President Trump. Everyone is to stay put.
And there you have it.
He didn't say much.
A rarity right there
nothing.
playing out too. I mean, the back of his head, it is rare that with questions being tossed his way, that the former president would ignore them. But in this moment, he did.
Especially with the question that was shouted at him, how did you plead? I mean, I've been in that situation where you just want to say something to get a response, and he's usually pretty predictable. That was a pretty good line to put in the water because he could have just turned around and said, not guilty, but he didn't. Again, it could be a seething anger that we will see erupt when he gets back to Mar-a-Lago, or more of that melancholy that we've said, or maybe some of both. But that is, I think we can agree, not a happy Donald Trump.
He ain't happy, folks.
His eyes pierced the camera on the way in. On the way out, he was really tested by one of those reporters, and for years it was huge on guard.
Well,
and as you
I'll
say,
see y'all
one of those
later.
questions, very
Mr. Coco,
simple.
I'll be live later.
He said going in,
See y'all.
through our reporting, that we knew there'd be a not guilty plea. Look, but what we didn't know was.
Yeah, he's mad. He's mad, Hammer Nation. He's mad. He's not happy about this at all. So he's mad. And do I care? No. But I will see y'all later. Peaches.